campaign. Oh, well, are we on, Tim? Are we on?
Hello, Governor Paterson.
Are we on? Holy cow. You know what, Governor Paterson? We have the type of show where you just call in and all of a sudden you're on the line. We have not figured out the technology of welcoming guests. But we have
shocking. I thought I was calling in to tell you guys I'd call you back in a couple of minutes, but now I'm on.
You're on. We hook you right on. So we have the honor and privilege, Brad. Brad, why don't you introduce our incredible guest?
Yes, we have the former great governor of New York, David Paterson, on Gotham Talk Radio with Brad Gerstmann and Dave Schwartz. Even if it was a mistake and the governor was planning on calling back, now he's stuck on with us.
Right, exactly.
Welcome, Governor.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm just finishing up at dinner, and it's great to talk to you guys, and it's good to hear you all back on the radio again.
Yes, it's great to have you on, and I hope you're enjoying. What's for dinner tonight, Governor?
Well, tonight I'm having dinner in a French restaurant in Harlem, which actually exists now. It's open. And it is called Chez Lucien. And it's a great restaurant right by the more famous Red Rooster. But when the place is packed and everyone's running around in the Red Rooster, there's a place to have a quiet dinner, and I'm doing it at
that's great.
Chez Lucien with an executive from a group called the Posse Foundation, which rounds up groups of children in neighborhoods and sends them all to the same college. So they sort of have a relationship with people when they get there. Because studies have shown that students do better when they have a more interactive social life and people to talk to when they go to college. A lot of students go to college and get lost, and it hurts their studies.
That sounds
that's a great idea. I
me.
think colleges want you to go in cold and get lost, but the student always wants to know people. So that's a great service.
Yes, exactly. Wow. Exactly.
Well, also my David Schwartz right here, where he went into college without knowing anybody, and he got lost. He got himself into trouble.
I did, yeah.
And,
no trouble.
Nevertheless,
I found my way.
Yeah.
I found my way.
Well, when I was at Columbia University, that happened to me. It wasn't that I didn't know people, but there was no real Columbia University, maybe the fourth hardest school to get into in the country, and it's great to have it on your resume, but it was almost like going to graduate school at the college level. And I graduated high school a year early, so I was younger than everyone there. And it was not a pleasant experience, and it hurt my performance as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Well, look, everybody knows you as the great governor of New York. A lot of people aren't aware that prior to that you were a New York State senator, and you were the Democratic leader of the New York State Senate for a number of years, and then you were ran on the ticket with Eliot Spitzer as lieutenant governor, and then you were out of nowhere, pushed up and forced into the governorship without much notice to you. And that's a great story in and of itself. But since then, you've done some terrific things, and we wanted to, see how you're doing in terms of, we know you had the radio show, you're still on the radio, and you're still, you're back in the business world, and you have a consulting firm. And I want to just go through some of that with you. Why don't you give us what's been going on since your days as governor?
I have a consulting firm known as DAP Strategies, and I help a lot of companies try to interact with governments. And I specifically consult for Touro College, which would like to attain university status. And there's a process that you go through when your college ascends to the stature of becoming a university. It has to do with the number of PhD programs that you have. And in addition to that, as you said, I do some talk radio and a lot of public speaking. And most important thing since I've been governor is I wake up in the morning. Everything's not my fault. So I feel pretty good.
All right, so I was thinking about you coming on today, and I was playing with this in my head. And I said to myself, you know what? The biggest mistake you made, Governor Paterson, as governor of the state of New York, is that you did not take that U.S. Senate seat. You would have gotten so much flack for a month. But after that, you would have been sitting pretty. You would have been the U.S. Senator, probably U.S. Senator for life. But hear the rest of this. The great Malcolm Smith would have become the governor. And by that move, you would have caused him not to get indicted by trying to buy the governorship.
Oh, wow.
What do you think of that one?
Pretty good, Dave. All right.
Well, that's pretty good, David, but there's one little problem. didn't factor in, and I factored it in. And I just hope that the people of New York will give me some credit for this. And it was the fact that at the time that I became, the Senate appointment became available when Hillary Clinton, our senator, became Secretary of State. A week before that, there was a bitter, bitter fight to make Malcolm Smith the majority leader. And as you remember, there were three people. They call themselves the Three Amigos.
Mm.
They're now known as the Three Inmates because they're all in prison. And they were shaking down both the Republicans and the Democrats, and both sides were cooperating because they wanted to be in the majority in the Senate. And had I appointed myself to the Senate, that would not have automatically made Malcolm Smith the acting governor, because those guys would have started up another phony.
Oh, that would have been great
Imagine
to watch.
a fight over governor. These guys be fighting over who's going to be governor.
Over the governor, and if they could cause this much trouble to elect a majority leader, just imagine the damage they could have done. And remember, later that year, they did bolt. Two of them went over to serve with the Republicans. One became the majority leader of the Republican Senate, which
you can't make this up.
And look, I'm not saying it's because there's Republicans, because the Democrats have done this. It's been equally bad. How could you take a person like this and make him your majority leader just because he gave you the final vote to be in the majority?
Governor, you really deprived us of some great theater. You really did. That would have been, to watch that play out, that would have been, for us observers,
oh my God.
It would have been incredible.
I think that it would have been great theater, but I think that it would have all been blamed on me.
Right. You know what? You would have pulled that escape hatch and just jumped out and had your parachute with a big smile on your face, sitting in Washington. But there's one part. It's a technical area of governing that nobody gives you enough credit for, and that is how a governor can pass a budget, can force it down the legislature's throat. You were the one that found that way of doing it by passing the extenders, I guess it was part of the budget at a time, and just forcing the legislature to decide if they're going to shut down government or not. And you were the one that was able to do that. And
you invented it.
Yeah, you really invented it. Other governors,
well,
had
I'll
to
tell
wait.
you, it was
very powerful.
I think they call serendipitous.
Right.
Like the way that antibiotics were discovered in a petri dish, or the X-ray was invented when someone turned on an ultraviolet light in a butcher shop and they could see the bones of the meat in the butcher shop.
Right.
And what happened was that my budget director, Robert Megna, who's still there with Governor Cuomo, said to me, boy, the legislator's not going to be happy. We took everything away from them in this extender. And I took that to mean that we made some cuts. So I went on NPR in an interview, and I said that, don't worry, even though the budget's late, we're already cutting. And Megna flies in my office and he says, you can't say that. That's not what we're doing. So I said, well, what are we doing? He said, no, it's just that we're just going to extend everything exactly. Usually we add some perks on to the extenders to give the legislators, a good feeling, but we're being tough this year. So I said, well, why can't we put the cuts in the extenders? And they said, well, it's never been done before. Well, we went to my counsel. His name was Peter Kiernan, and he told us there was nothing in the law that said we couldn't do it. And Governor Andrew Cuomo, when he came into office, he said, let me tell you something. I'm going to take that invention of yours, and I'm not going to wait until budget time. I'm going to tell them right away. Either you pass my budget, or I'll make you pass it by putting the extender in with the cuts in it. And if the legislature doesn't pass it, they're not allowed to change it. It automatically shuts the government down. And the legislators do not want to have that on their conscience. The same thing that happened to the Republicans. They didn't do very well, and the government shut down last October. And so if you notice, Andrew Cuomo has passed 3 straight budgets on time, and it will be 4 at the end of this month.
But by the way, speaking about Peter Kiernan, I don't think there's an official in government that aged more under working for you. He aged. Peter Kiernan, with all the mishigas that was taking place during that period of time, all the turmoil, He walked in. He had, he walked in all fresh from wherever he was coming from. I think private law practice, and whatever went on during that period of time, it was so tumultuous that he walked out of there. He wasn't the same person. But that's just a side note. Very nice guy, though. Very nice guy. But
very nice person. He actually was the MC this Sunday in Albany when my portrait was hung on the wall for the first time. And he spoke, and my ex-wife spoke. It's pretty good when the ex-wife will speak at your event.
Wow.
And I spoke, and Governor Andrew Cuomo. We had a wonderful event, and the weather kept the crowd down, which in our case was good because we had about 400 or 500 RSVPs, and we only had 250 slots.
Well, that's great. It was very well deserved. But let me ask you something about that. Why isn't Mario Cuomo's picture up? I mean, isn't that a little funny that your picture went up before Mario Cuomo?
His went up last June.
Oh, it did go up. Okay,
I
missed
I knew it was
All right.
up. I don't know why you're asking that.
All right, go ahead. I have a good question, but I'll wait for
let
Brad.
Let me ask you this about the picture. I actually went, knowing that we were going to have this interview. I actually went. I was in Albany yesterday. Went to the second floor. Went personally, took a look at the photo. I thought it was outstanding. You looked as handsome as ever. I would have recommended a darker suit, but you wanted to go with a lighter suit. It looked very good on you. Here's my question.
Well, there was a reason for that. Almost every portrait is taken with a darker suit. And the portrait painter wanted to show with a brighter tie and a lighter suit that this was a transitional period. This was an alternative governor who focused on the differences among people, not the similarities. And so my work on the minority and women's business enterprises, on immigration, on issues involving the disabled, and
gay
doing
marriage,
the executive order recognizing same-sex marriage out of state. He thought that was a difference. He wanted to show a kind of an alternative appearance. So that was done deliberately.
And I thought the colors, from an aesthetic standpoint, looked absolutely beautiful. But I had something else that I wanted to mention, and I think you were alluding to it, is that there was in the photo in the back, Dave, I'm not sure if you noticed, in the back of the photo, there's a cane. There is a cane that was painted in.
I didn't see the photo yet.
And that cane, now we know that Governor Paterson is legally blind, okay? I've never seen him use a cane. I noticed that some blind individuals use canes. I've never seen the governor use a cane.
See him use a cane. He used to run up the steps whenever he made a speech.
As a matter of fact, I've seen him go in the other direction.
I still don't know how you do that, but
yeah, he actually. It seems to me that he actually sees, but he is legally blind. So why did they paint this cane in the background of your picture?
The reason is that I always tested as eligible to use the cane for the blind. And I'm well aware that many people who are disabled feel very insecure about their disability. They feel that when other people know it, it diminishes them. They feel that the sense of being disabled is a sense of not feeling that the person has the capacity to do things. The unemployment rate among disabled people in this country is 37.5%. And so you have people, even as high as President Ronald Reagan, who needed a hearing aid but never wore it in public. And the reason that I didn't use the cane is when I was a young person, I was living in a pretty rough neighborhood, and I saw me walking around with a cane as a signal, here's the easiest target. So that's why I didn't use it. But I wanted people to know that the cane was available to me, and that as I get older, and who knows if my sight is more diminished than it is now, I will use the canes. I am proud of the fact that these aids for the disabled exist, and I'm proud to use them. And I wanted to make a public statement to the disabled and the non-disabled that I don't run away from who I am. And when I need that cane, I'm going to pick it up and use it.
You know, this is part of a larger conversation, and we're going to definitely need more time with you at a later date. But I want to just some quick comments on, timing is everything sometimes. We have a governor now. New York is back in business. He's on the yogurt farm. The cows are working overtime. The wine country, the this, the that. New York is energized. We got all the cranes in the air. But, timing is really everything. What most people may not even remember, you were thrown into this office and the world was collapsing. Bear Stearns closed the doors.
Lehman Brothers.
Thousands of employees Lehman Brothers, you name it. The world was collapsing, and most of that world was in New York City, which affected your budget. You had a $10 billion budget deficit before you even woke up the next morning. Can you just comment a little bit on that period of time? Because I think you handled it brilliantly, and Brad pointed out the extenders and everything else. But if you could just comment on that now, and I think at a later date we want to spend more time with you on this subject because it's so fascinating.
Well, Bear Stearns was taken over by the federal government on March 16th, 2008, and the stock fell to like $2 a share. And I was sworn in as governor on March 17th. In the morning of my swearing, and that's bad enough that I'm being inaugurated, and I didn't know I was going to be. But then I had to change my speech at 11 o'clock that I was giving at 1 o'clock to accommodate the economic problems that we were about to face. And on July 29th of 2008, I made a televised address to the citizens of the state, and I told them that I am sorry to say this, but this is going to be the worst recession since the Great Depression. I was pilloried for making those remarks. Everybody thought it was a joke, and they said, he's not elected. He hasn't been in office long. But by September 12th, 13th, and 14th of the same year, everyone knew that Lehman Brothers went out of business, that Merrill Lynch had to be subsumed by Bank of America, and that AIG needed an $85 billion bailout and then $100 billion other dollars to save them. And so the place really was falling apart, and I probably got then the credit for being the first public official in the United States to call that problem for what it was. And I think that if I had stepped down right at that time, I would have never had another problem in my life.
That, we were there to live through it with you, although we didn't have to wake up with the concerns that you did, of course. But, I think, and we have time probably just for a quick answer on this, but, tell us what it's like moving from lieutenant governor to governor and having, and being blind and not being able to read all the material maybe that you need to read. I know you've mentioned this in the past, but can you give the listeners a little bit of insight into, how that disability
being blind, what I
problem?
tried to do to overcome that challenge was to always be prepared. And for the first time in my life, there was a situation that was overwhelming, that was not within my contemplation. Having to take over as governor 2 weeks before the budget is due, and I would say that I'd be dishonest if I didn't say that the added problem of having this disability hurt me. I'd go to receptions, I'm talking to people, and I said, that's really interesting. Who do you work for? And they said, I work for you, Governor. And I couldn't remember meeting this person.
Sure.
Because, there's so many people that work there, and you usually recognize them by face, but I couldn't do that. And what I think was that what I did have was an ability or a intestinal sort of fortitude to recognize that there was a serious economic problem, that nobody had the willingness or the ability at that time to identify what was happening, because people in the marketplace, and as you see now, people like the investors like John Paulson and Jeff Green and those people, they made billions of dollars because they started betting against the mortgage-backed securities, because everyone knew that this bubble was going to burst. I wouldn't say everyone knew, but it was known, and no one wanted to say it, because when you say it, you get called an alarmist. Well, you know what? Sometimes the country needs an alarmist, and that's what it needed at that particular time. And I'm just glad that the legislature sure did cooperate with me. They came back. We cut about $1.2 billion off of our deficit. So we were ahead of the rest of the country, and we had to be.
That wasn't
New York receives 22.5% of its revenues directly from Wall Street profits, and it all went away in 2008, creating the highest budget escalation deficit in the history of this country.
Well,
Lucky
Governor,
you.
Governor, we are out of time, but I want to tell you that you are a fascinating individual, and we need more time with you next time. So I'm hoping, you know what, Brad, Governor, let's do this. You know, next time we have you on, we're going to pick you up from the city, right? We're going to get you out to Long Island to our studio. We're going to have a nice dinner before the show, and we're going to spend an entire hour with you in our studio. Would you accept that invitation?
Sounds great to me.
Oh, that would be so great, because you are so much fun, and I want our listeners to hear, you know, how fascinating you are. So thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Brad. It's great to talk to you guys. We've had a great time off and on working together. I did your shows back in 2011, and I'll be happy to do them again.
Thank you, Governor. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. That
was you guys are great. You have your own style. You sort of bicker with each other as you're talking to the guests. It's great. Great radio.
Thank you, Governor.
Coming from you, that is a tremendous compliment.
That's a soundbite.
Yes.
That is Tim. That's the soundbite.
Book that one.
Yeah.